Greetings, members one and all of the Salivation Nation. Should you trade your silver for gold? Now that may sound like a ridiculous question considering the ratio of gold to silver right now. You know, there was a time when it was 100 to 1, but right now it's averaging just above 90 to 1. That means for every 90 ounces of silver, you can get 1 ounce of gold. And the display that you see before you here is showing a sort of a micro scale of that. About 9 ounces of gold, or 9 ounces of silver, can buy about a 1/10 ounce of gold there. And this is something that, if you look at it in this particular display, it kind of brings it wide open as to, it tells us a couple of things, that you can get a lot of silver for the price of gold for sure, but also if you were to trade that silver in, well, you lose a lot of silver for that very small, tiny piece of gold. And that's a tough pill to swallow for some, because for most people that are, especially those who are really bullish on silver, it would seem like a losing proposition, especially now with the ratio being as wide as it is. Now, this is, we haven't seen this kind of ratio in well over, 25 years. And so the question is should I trade my silver for gold? And it's an open-ended question. It's something that I don't believe that anybody should just go and do in a knee-jerk reaction, considering the performance of silver over the last couple of years now. But there's been times like this in the past, for a much longer time, when silver's been really kind of stagnant, much more stagnant even than now. But this is really before the age of the internet, where people could talk about this. I remember buying silver when it was $4 and $5 an ounce. And I remember when that ratio was very high before. And in my mind, I was thinking, well, if I buy silver and the price goes up, let's say, 25-cent rise in silver price as opposed to a couple of dollars rise in gold price, well, you'd be coming out ahead with silver. And that was sort of the thought in my mind as a beginning stacker, so to speak. Although I really wasn't hardcore at it, but I did buy a couple of bars, and that was sort of my mentality, that the movement in silver price per ounce, I might do better in that in the long run, and in time, that ratio did squeeze back down. And so there was a time when the ratio was high between gold and silver, but it did narrow. And it narrowed at times of great volatility in the markets. And of course, we saw that in 2011. Of course, 2011 was an anomaly, and there were other anomalies as well when the gold and silver prices went up, I think, in a sense, not solely based off of natural market forces in terms of what the normal indicators for price movements are, but also psychological levels, which I think tend to go beyond the norm. And I believe we could probably see that again, although, past performance, they say, is not indicative of future results or what could be. And I believe there's been a kind of a shift in the view of silver, even in the past 6-7 years, with how many uses and how diverse it's been utilized in industry and biomedical technology and the like. And I think that is what has caused the duality nature of silver to really shine, pun intended there, because, it is utilized in industry, it is seen as a commodity, but it is the one commodity that is also seen as money. Though it's dormant money right now, it is a store of value, it is a store of wealth. And because of that, people are reluctant, and I think rightfully so, to just trade all this in for all of this, for this little piece here. But notwithstanding, as I've been talking about my own personal strategy over the last 2 years or so is to try to accumulate a bit more gold, and that is something that I'm trying to do. So I'm not necessarily trading my silver for gold. I'm just buying more gold than silver in terms of dollar amount. So that's my answer, and that's what I'm doing, and that's what I've really been encouraging others to do here in the community. I'm not a financial advisor by any stretch, but I do see gold as the ultimate safe haven, and silver as a slightly riskier safe haven. I believe it is a safe haven. It will never go to zero, and it will float above and below the rate of inflation. But nonetheless, you think about what you're comparing it to. You're comparing silver to a depreciating asset, and that depreciating asset is the fiat dollar. And so that dollar bill is, by the very nature of what the Fed wants to achieve, is a 2% inflation rate each year. Now, silver will lose more than 2% sometimes, and other times it will keep up with inflation in time, so that especially compared to when I started stacking it at $4 or $5 an ounce. Well, I think most of us can agree that we don't think it'll ever go back down to that amount again. Although, I remember when it was creeping up to just under $10 an ounce by the mid 2000s. And it's like, wow, silver's kind of going up here. So you got to take a look at perspective, the perspective of time. You got to smooth out the peaks and smooth out the lows too, because these low periods that we're seeing now I think are abnormal as well. But keep in mind, notwithstanding the ratio of gold to silver, I believe is probably abnormally high right now. However, I don't think we're going to see the gold to silver ratio ever get back to what is considered the average. I used to say, well, if we got to 40 to 1, that would be about right. The average right now is about 55 to 1. I don't think we're going to get there again either. But I believe we could see it squeeze and narrow up, especially if this bull run continues. We've seen gold go above $1,400 an ounce. Silver did not make the moves that some of us expected in the last few days, but this is just a few days' time. We've got to be patient. We've got to hold out, and patience is the key with all of this, I believe. And so, the answer to the question then is, should I trade my silver into gold? With the gold, I think it depends on what your personal portfolio is. If you're heavily weighted down in silver, and I mean that literally, because there is something to be said about storage of silver. Look at all this silver here compared to this gold with what the ratios are at today. If this is your personal gold to silver ratio, I believe that's pretty good in your collection. That's actually what I'm aiming for. I'm not there yet. I don't have my personal gold to silver ratio does not reflect the real silver to gold ratio now. And I believe that's probably a good target to have for most of us out there in terms of hedging and diversification in the precious metals, and that is to at least match what the going rate is for the gold to silver ratio. At least in some mind, I'd like to have my personal gold to silver ratio. I'd love to be 50 to 1. That would be nice in my view. That's what I'm aiming for. So my answer to that personally myself is just to accumulate more gold than silver. It takes a lot of patience and time. If you're heavily weighted down or don't have any gold at all, I encourage you to get some gold. And if it's too expensive right now, and it is pretty expensive. In fact, some people think that it's overvalued right now, and it could be. It could really come back down. Wait a few days, see what happens with that gold to silver ratio. See if it tightens up. If it does, it may not be a bad idea to take some of your silver and trade it in for gold. Now, when doing that, you want to be very careful with how you go about that. Your LCS may not give you spot price, especially if it's generic rounds and the like. They may honor the actual trade with them in their shops or what have you. Who knows? It just depends on the LCS. It depends on what their policies are at the local coin shop or online dealer or what have you. But if you can get at least spot price, that would be the way to go. And you just have to work that out within and among yourselves. You can obviously try doing it through other exchanges, but you got to be very careful dealing with other exchanges such as Craigslist or YouTube or Instagram or what have you. Any kind of other trading mechanism you can find. But I would say if you're heavy into silver and have no gold, I would encourage you to try to get some gold. I think it's a good way to diversify. Gold is the ultimate hedge, I believe. I think that it's shown itself. If you look at over the past years, it's shown itself. But silver is not down. Silver is not out. Silver is low right now, but you know what? You look at through the period of time, through the history, especially considering adjusted for inflation over multiple years, silver's doing just okay, doing fine. When you dollar cost average, it's doing what it's supposed to do, especially depending on when you purchased and when you bought. It's a matter of holding out and seeing where it goes. You're never going to get rich off of either metal, by the way. You can only expect that it's going to preserve your wealth. And consider what you're talking about here. We're talking about against the fiat dollar right now. And in other currencies, you're seeing record highs. I think the Australian dollar right now, gold is at record high. And silver is doing quite well too in some of these other currencies out there. You think about it, we're comparing to the dollar. We're comparing to other currencies. All the currencies are in trouble. They are. Make no mistake. Because what are they based on? They're based off of fiat. That's government decree. Now, make no mistake, there's a lot to be said about that. Because we have faith in our dollars. And I encourage people to hold dollars. Not only to have some money in the bank, literally in the bank, but also to have cash on hand as well. There's a lot to be said for it. However, keep in mind that every year we go deeper and deeper into debt in this country. And every time we go into debt and with deficit spending here, there's less faith in our currency than there was in other times. The dollar index, right now we're the best of the worst. That doesn't mean we're healthy as a nation in terms of our dollar, in terms of what we've done with quantitative easing, 3 rounds of it over the course of the last 10 years, and some people are saying that we should do a 4th round of it. That's not good, folks. That means that holding both of these metals is a good idea. There's no question about it. You can't go wrong holding both of those metals unless you obviously sell when the metals have fallen in price. But nonetheless, you hold on to it as long as you can. If you do need to sell them and you lose out in making that sell as a pure stacker, it's a bummer. It really is. But that's why we should diversify in everything we do, not just precious metals, but have other things. This is why I encourage people to have savings. That's why I encourage people to have cash on hand. That's why I encourage people to contribute to your IRAs, to your 401ks, wherever you can to protect yourself, to diversify. That's what it's about in the long run. So, and that diversification includes the precious metals. That's why I've gotten a little bit of platinum too. That may prove to be a mistake, by the way. Who knows? It's an industrial metal. It's a fringe precious metal, platinum is. So is palladium. Palladium's doing very well. Rhodium's doing incredibly well. But in the end, it's all about fiscal responsibility and diversification. And that's the key. And that's why we hold these precious metals. These precious metals, gold and silver, they are self-evident. We don't need to sell them. We need to stack them, and we need to understand them. That's what it boils down to. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for watching. Post your thoughts below, and encourage you to please rate, share, and subscribe.